Donald Trump was interviewed in the past day by Geraldo Rivera, and the topic of his coronavirus response came up. A question that he had been asked months ago. Do you acknowledge any mistakes? Were there any flaws in your response? It's been a while, and a lot more people have died, so here is what he had to say.
I'll leave you pretty soon, but looking back on this awful plague that's now killed almost 160,000 Americans, there were some missteps. Don't you wish you had done some things differently?
I think that, first of all, the governors run their states. You understand that. That's the way it's set up. I mean, that's the way it's supposed to be. And whether you call it federalist or anything else, the governors run. We've had some great governors, and we have some governors that didn't do as well. But what I did with ventilators and what I did with getting people equipment, because the governors were not stocked, nobody has ever done a better job. We've done a great job, and we haven't been rewarded with the publicity.
So you don't admit any missteps? You don't think that maybe if you were a little more enthusiastic about it earlier?
I guess you could say that people call things wrong, but that it's understandable. Nobody knew what this disease was. At the beginning, they said no masks, and people still say that, some people, but some people don't. I figure I say use them. I say use them, but I wouldn't mandate it, but I say use them. But no, I think we've done an unbelievable job.
So he says use them. If you want to wear a mask, you should use them, I guess. But he acknowledges no mistakes. Gary, what do you think? Is there a mistake or two that maybe he can acknowledge?
I think Trump's entire existence is a mistake, okay? And certainly his response to the coronavirus. There have been missteps from day one. From him saying that it was just a small thing, that they had it under control. And the truth is, what you need from a commander-in-chief, from somebody in leadership, is somebody who's going to give you the facts, somebody who's going to tell you the truth, even if that truth is difficult, even if that truth is hard for people to swallow, but you're going to tell people what's real so that we can prevent deaths. And so what I think Trump has accepted is that the majority of the people are Black, brown, or poor that are dying from this virus, and he's accepted that most of those people probably wouldn't support him anyway.
Yeah, we're not supposed to imply that there could be like a political sort of motivation to it, but it is difficult to have lived through the past few months and not think that that is driving the response, and was since the very beginning. They convinced themselves that it's only certain sorts of people that are dying and getting sick and losing their jobs, so it's just not that big of an issue. But and I saw Geraldo had tweeted out that he had the interview, and his wife was like, he sounds so reasonable. And I responded to him like, you just asked the president if he made any mistakes during a pandemic response where 160,000 people have already lost their lives, and he said no, and then you moved on. How you wouldn't allow any other politician to do that? That's crazy. The idea, like, if 1,000 people had died, someone with a minimum of the ability to self-analyze should be able to acknowledge something that could have been done, even hypothetically, that would have been better. And he can't do that in what is the biggest domestic failure of our government in our lifetime. It's insane, and it needs to be called out, even by people like Geraldo who, support Trump. They have to be acknowledged that that's insane.
Well, one of the things that I've consistently talked about is if we compare this to gun violence, right? If these were homicides versus people dying from a virus, would we then consider that our cities were safe, right? We would not. If we imagine that cities like Baton Rouge that have experienced several hundred deaths in the last few months, we would not consider if this was gun violence, that this was something acceptable. And it is a virus, and it is killing people, and we should view it the same way Trump views Chicago's gun violence. And if he took the coronavirus as seriously as he took going after protesters or targeting gun violence in major cities, then I think then we would get better results out of this guy.
Yeah. Just, like I think about the explosion in Lebanon. That over, I think the most recent number I saw was over 140 people have died, and it's being identified as the government just completely failed to move this material. They just let it sit there for a few years. How could the government have done this? And it's true. It's totally true. And 10 times as many people died just yesterday in America from coronavirus. And we have to be able to acknowledge that some of that would have been unavoidable, but some of it was avoidable if the president had cared from the very beginning. But, Geraldo continued on asking him, I think, a great follow-up question that I've been wondering about. Why don't you express a little bit more, like, empathy for the people who've died, frustration with the huge number who have died? And here's what he had to say.
And I think people need reassurance that maybe you should be more vocal about your concern about so many people being afflicted with this awful thing.
Well, I am very vocal. It hurts me no end. I think it's a disgrace, and I say it all the time. I say we shouldn't have lost one person. We shouldn't have lost one person. This should have been stopped by China. China did this to us. It should have been stopped by China. They stopped it from going into China. And they didn't stop it from going into Europe and the U.S. and the rest of the world. And Europe's plenty angry at them, too, I can tell you. But it's one of those things that's just terrible, and it should have never happened. They should have never allowed it to come out of China, but they did. They stopped it going into China, but they didn't stop it going to us and to the rest of the world. And I'm
sorry you were in the reason.
Very angry about
it. As we all are, and as...
That is really something. He's prompted to give empathy, and he says, and I am really angry. It's like, you haven't seen someone in a movie express empathy? You can't, like, just mimic? You can't read the lines? Like, wow, he's barely a human in some ways.
Facts, brother.
For more political news, breakdowns, interviews, stories of activism, and me trying my hardest to care about the occasional big celebrity news story, subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/The Damage Report. And you can ring the bell wherever it is so you don't miss anything.